my central banker. I don't trust politicians anymore. I'm going to trade with this currency with my computer and my cell phone.
Well, they did that. The reason the Bitcoin shot up was after Cyprus, when they thought the government was going to get the hands on the money in the banks. So people turned to Bitcoins to keep them protected.
So I ignore everything till it gets to $1 billion of market cap.
Okay.
That happened recently with Bitcoin, well over $1 billion in value. So it's here to stay. When you've accumulated a virtual worth of $1 billion and people are willing to trade it and actually buy things with it, turn it back into hard assets. And here's the key, Heather. Owners of hard assets are willing to take Bitcoin. This is here to stay. That's what's going to happen. And no central banker can control it.
But you just called it a Barbie currency. I was going to say, is it all hocus pocus? I mean, is it a legitimate form of currency to trade?
It is. And as soon as it passed $1 billion and someone bought a hard asset with it, in my books, as an investor, it became real. Now, at the same time, because relative to all other currencies, it's tiny. $1 billion is irrelevant in the currency market. Remember, the currency markets are the largest markets on earth, bigger than commodities, bigger than stocks, bigger than bonds. It's going to grow, but it's going to take a long time. But the key is volatility. Nobody's going to put a large part of their net worth into this thing because it can go up and down 60% in a day, as we saw yesterday. But is it here to stay? Oh, yeah. So will I take 2 or 3% in Bitcoins? I think I might. I'm going to start looking at it.
Are you really? I was going to say, are you into this at all?
I have a basket of currencies, Heather. The way you diversify your risk in currencies is to own many of them. I own euros, I own Swiss francs, I own Canadian dollars, American dollars. And I might start to dabble, a little dabble-dooey of Bitcoin.
That's exactly what I was going to.
He literally, he's like a yo-yo. He goes wherever the wind blows. And that's Kevin O'Leary on Bitcoin. And someone in a comment pinned this video of essentially Kevin O'Leary supporting Bitcoin. This was in the early days of him getting involved in Bitcoin, which is like 2013. And he was talking about the value of it and how it's decentralized, government's not involved in it, public ledgers, and the fact of it's a store of value, it's a natural store of value, which is different to something like gold, finite amount, demand, you know, all the benefits of Bitcoin. And then he's asked, is this a legitimate currency? This reporter asked him and says, listen, is this a legitimate currency? He first called it a Barbie currency, and then the reporter said, is this a legitimate form of currency? And he says yes. And his test for that is whether something hits $1 billion market cap. And he says, yeah, Bitcoin has hit a market cap of $1 billion. And so he's now involved and now starting to get interested in Bitcoin. He's not going to put his entire net worth into it or half his net worth in it because it can drop by 60%, drawdowns at 80%. So he's like, listen, something I wouldn't get involved with because it's a legitimate currency, it's a store of value. But what's funny about him is that he goes on to shows and he trash talks it. But in this interview, you hear him talk about all the benefits of it and how he's involved himself by putting a bit of his money aside. And then in other interviews, he says he's only put in 10%, he's only put in $100. But here he's talking about putting in a percentage, 10, 20% of his net worth. But then in interviews, he says he's put in $100. And I'm talking about the latest interviews where he said he's put in only $100. But here he's clearly saying he's putting in a bit of his money because he does buy things like euros, francs, yen, US dollar. He's involved in the currency market. Or you could call him an FX trader if you want to, because he is involved in the currency market. But he also says, listen, I'm also putting a lot of my money because Bitcoin is here to stay. He says, and I quote, Bitcoin is here to stay. So why does he trash talk it so much? And that really has everyone confused. He's very hypocritical. One day he supports Bitcoin, the other day he doesn't. And I think he lost a lot of money. This is just my opinion. I think this man lost a lot of money. He's bitter about Bitcoin, and he's finding a way to trash talk it to bring down the price, either to jump in again or to just, or he has a short position in it, and he's being wiped out by the rise in Bitcoin. I'm not too sure, but this is very interesting because this is the first interview of him trash talking it, and then of him supporting it, and then I'm going to show you also a video of him being a major supporter of it. So I'm really also trying to understand, where does this man actually stand? I mean, if it's $100 that he's involved in, I don't know why he dresses up every morning. I mean, he'll wake up, early in the morning, get ready, go on these shows just to trash talk it. For someone who doesn't care about it, he seems to be very invested in it, which is very weird. I don't know what you guys think.
Wonderful thinks it's worthless.
Well,
He called it garbage this
want
morning.
to explore I did say that. I want to explore the idea that there's nothing here except raw speculation. No different than when I go to Las Vegas and put my money on black or red on a roulette wheel, because where is the intrinsic value inherent in deploying real capital? Let's talk real money here, and putting it into Bitcoin as a storage of value. I get gold. For 2,000 years, including the Romans, they saw value in owning that as an asset class. Tell me why this, which is basically a digital game, that's the way I look at it, has any intrinsic value. When people actually put real money into this, they make no interest, they can't pay their taxes with it, the regulators don't like it, which is always a problem for compliance. And where's the long-term value? Just this idea that they're going to cut the number of units in half, such a scam. Like, that's just totally BS.
So I would say two things. One is it's disruptive technology. So if you look at it from a technology standpoint.
But that also has an odor of BS to it.
Look, everything that's new seems different, right, in the beginning. And I think what you've got to realize is with Bitcoin specifically, money is a belief system. So the US dollar, the only reason why you and I use it is because we believe it has value. So if I give you $1, you give me a good or service in exchange. Right. We believe that it has value. Bitcoin has value because two people who exchange it believe it has that value. And what we're seeing is the volume, right? Look at people using it. That's ultimately what matters.
What about all the other crypto crap? There's lots of other coins.
I believe Bitcoin is the king and is going to stay the king for a very long time.
So I taught a class at Harvard 18 months ago that young people in that class challenged me. I put $100 into something called Coinbase, which is a wallet thing. And
you buy Bitcoin?
I bought them all. I bought all the crypto crap. I put $100 in. It's now worth 30.
30.
That's a 70% loss on my crypto crap. Now, I bought them all. I think that really sucks. And I think people should understand today the hot digital is Bitcoin. Tomorrow it could be whatever, right?
Again, I think that Bitcoin, the reason why Bitcoin is getting so much attention, it's the best performing asset in the last decade. Right, it's drastically outperformed S&P, every other kind of financial asset that's out there. And the second thing is the institutions are coming in because Bitcoin is actually a better store of value. It's more transparent and more secure. So regulators, they actually like Bitcoin in the sense of law enforcement can track criminal activity. Right, every single transaction is done on a public ledger.
I'm not sure the law enforcement loves Bitcoin.
I've interviewed a DA agent who came on, and they would love for criminals to use Bitcoin over U.S. dollars and cash, right? It's much more traceable. And so what law enforcement is saying is they want these digital currencies used, Bitcoin specifically, because of the public nature of the transactions, easier to track the criminal activity.
After the fact.
After the fact, yeah, of course. Well, U.S. dollars, you can't track it before or after.
Last time this had a big run up to 20,000 and people started talking about assets with it, the SEC was handing out subpoenas like birthday cards.
They were doing it for the ICOs. So ICOs are essentially people who took the concept of a blockchain or a cryptocurrency token, and they were using it for fundraising for companies. And so you can imagine if you go out and solicit funds from investors and you do nefarious things, the SEC cares and they want to come talk to you.
That was basically fraud. I mean, you're talking about instances of fraud. And the fact of the matter is Bitcoin has been acting pretty well in respect to the recent bad news hitting the sector. We had a hack of Binance, and then we also have the New York AG bringing charges against Tether and Bitfinex, and the coin has done
Melissa, if it's a real currency,
well.
Why can't I pay my taxes with it?
You
why
can.
Does the IRS take it?
You can. In the state of Ohio, they accept Bitcoin as for taxes, and there's other states that are working on it now.
Federally, you think it'll ever get there?
For sure.
Wow, you're an optimist.
When?
I'm not in the business of making bets on the federal government's regulatory decisions.
Do we hit the past highs again?
I definitely think that we will, right? Again,
So what sort of time frame?
Look, that's the hard part. The way that I think to look at this, it's a non-correlated asymmetric return asset. And we definitely, in my opinion, we've hit the bottom of the bear market. We've now entered into this bull market. Historically, about a year out from that halving period is when that kicks off. It wouldn't surprise me if we enter kind of a 2 to 3 year bull market now. And 20,000, I think, will be a blip on the radar, just like previous past highs were.
Only Bitcoin,
Bitcoin.
No other crypto crap.
I'm not here to talk about anything else but Bitcoin.
It seems you would think that if it's all boats would rise in this tide of crypto.
So for your portfolio, here's the number one thing I can tell you as to why you should own Bitcoin. It's a non-correlated asymmetric return asset that the value drivers of all of your equities, everything else is tied to earnings, GDP, interest rates, etc.
The problem is that Bitcoin's not tied to anything.
Well, neither is U.S. dollars, and how big is your cash position?
You know, I look, I love your optimistic view of it. You haven't changed my mind at all. It's still garbage, and I'm not going to take real money and put it into this thing. It's never going to happen. I mean, imagine real money, taking real dollars that I'm making in cash 2.1% on and putting it into crypto
Right.
crap.
Agree to disagree.
Absolutely.
I'm glad I have a lot of dry powder. I'm ready to go back and redeploy, and I'm looking for ideas, and I want to back management teams. I'm an investor. I love entrepreneurs, and I just feel invigorated and very optimistic that what's coming in the next couple of years is going to be really, really interesting, and I'm ready. I'm ready to invest.
Take 1%, put it in Bitcoin. You'll be very happy, my friend.
I can't argue with you, but I gave you a lot of reasons that you got to think it through a little bit. And I think some of those, if we had a debate, I mean, I am not against Bitcoin. I'm not against it. But, you know, when you're talking about putting millions of dollars to work, you really want to understand that you can think long term about it. And I have a feeling there'll be other alternative ideas. Maybe I should put some to work. Maybe you've convinced me. Maybe it's the major benefit of our time together today. Maybe I put a little bit more in just for the heck of it. I have a little bit, just so I can watch the price. But, you know, it bothers me when I can't get the regulator on board. There would be so much interest in Bitcoin.
You ready for
if
this?
It was just,
I'm going to blow your mind right now. 2 years ago, myself and my partners, we raised money from U.S. public pensions and bought Bitcoin with it. So U.S. public pensions are doing it. Fidelity, they've got a whole business doing it. PayPal, they got the regulators to approve it. The OCC, they came out. They said that banks, you can custody this. Right, I agree with you that the SEC.
I know, I'm aware of that, but if you actually look at the percentage of their assets invested in Bitcoin, it is so small that it doesn't even show up in an other category. It's 0.0000. Believe me, I know what institutions are doing. That's my whole job. Watching institutional funds, sovereign pension plans.
Just buy 1%. Just 1%.
Yeah, no, it's true. But even the sovereign guys aren't there yet. I mean, when Bitcoin becomes a sovereign pension plan asset, I'll know about it before you.
Seth Gibbs, it's great to have you with us, Seth.
Thanks
Talk
for
to
having
us
me.
about institutional interest in crypto.
Yeah, no, we're seeing a lot of institutional interest in crypto, and I'll tell you that the One River Digital announcement is a big deal. It's really going to be the go-to place for an institution that wants to put 50 million, 100 million into Bitcoin and Ethereum combined in a fiduciary structure, one where it's a fund structure. They have Coinbase on the back end, Northern Trust. So I think this is a big deal, and they're talking about going larger, which is great. I also think the inclusion of Ethereum is fantastic because there's so much innovation happening in crypto beyond just Bitcoin. Bitcoin is awesome. We love it. But a lot of the innovation is also happening on the Ethereum blockchain.
So Seth, can you kind of distill, I guess, into just a couple of sentences here as to why institutional investors are willing to wade into this space in a way that they weren't willing to do, 2-3 years ago when we were talking about that magnificent rally in Bitcoin back then?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of that ties into what brought me into the space full-time at the beginning of this year. It's the fact that institutional grade infrastructure has really been built up from 2017 to today. That's institutional grade custodians. That's the rules engines to make sure that funds don't go places that they're not supposed to go. That's prime brokers. That's the derivatives infrastructure. This morning, CME said they're launching Ethereum futures, but we got Bitcoin futures in December of 2017. So I think it's really having the infrastructure in place and having come in place since the last bull market. But secondly, I mean, I'll tell you this year, the regulatory environment has been one of the biggest positive surprises. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency saying that federally chartered banks can custody crypto. That's a really big deal. And we think we're going to see more on that front down the road that it is going to lay the groundwork to allow institutions to be comfortable that this is an asset class that's here to stay, and it has a lot of asymmetry to its return profile.
Seth, who all is buying? I mean, we know, is it high net worth individuals? Is it investment funds? Like, where's the marginal dollar coming from right now? We also know that some companies have put part of their treasury stock into Bitcoin. MicroStrategy has gotten a lot of attention. But, you know, obviously institutions is a broad category. What specifically do you see where the most action is?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The action today, right now, is actually in hedge funds. So it's a lot of different types of hedge funds, macro funds, funds that are actually focused on fundamental equities, but believe that there's a diversification benefit to Bitcoin and crypto. That's where we're seeing action today. I was talking to a desk a few days ago that was saying they have $10 billion plus hedge funds that are either buying Bitcoin right now or in the process of onboarding. So that's really the money that can move quickly and the money that's coming in today. But then you look beyond that, we're talking to defined benefit pension plans, we're talking to endowments, foundations, obviously family offices, high net worth, as you mentioned as well. What's fantastic is you get someone like the insurer, Mass Mutual, putting 100 million of Bitcoin in their general investment account last week. And I was talking to another insurance company, and they're looking at it now. So you get this competitive dynamic, and I would presume off of what MicroStrategy and Square have done, putting Bitcoin on their balance sheets, you're likely to see more companies over time looking at treasury engagement with Bitcoin as well.
Well, Seth, I mean, you talk about the big money managers. One of the biggest out there is, of course, Guggenheim, and they've been putting through the desire to be able to buy crypto into some of their funds. We actually spoke with Scott Minerd earlier, all to do with the Federal Reserve, but he came out with this eye-watering, eye-popping sort of viewpoint on where crypto is going. Just take a listen.
We made the decision to start allocating toward Bitcoin when Bitcoin was at 10,000. It's a little more challenging with the current price closer to 20,000. Amazing, you know, over a very short period of time how big of a run-up we've had. But having said that, our fundamental work shows that Bitcoin should be worth about $400,000.
Caroline, I think I'm going to have to one-up
That had our
Scott
jaws
there.
on the floor. We had to sort of call him up and make sure he was meaning it. Like, yeah, talk to us about that 400,000 figure. How quickly does he get there, Seth?
Well, you know, the way we're thinking about it, and my involvement in Bitcoin started in 2012, and CoinFund was founded in 2015. The way we're thinking about it is, if you look at kind of the pattern recognition of Bitcoin's 4-year cycles, 150 to 250,000 looks like the base case. But here's the thing, it's becoming an institutional asset class this cycle, and that strikes me as being analogous to, you know, my background is in equities. When Tesla stepped up from the $25 to $35 range up to 150 to 350, and then it consolidated for a while, I think we could actually pull forward the next cycle, see Bitcoin go to 500,000 to 1 million, and then probably consolidate for a few years in that range.
Yeah.
But I think we could actually get there in the 21, 22 timeframe.
To 2020 from 2013, him being a major support, he's now against it, and then he's for it again, and then he's against it again, and then he's for it again, and then he's against it again. And then he's like, listen, if you can convince me, I'll get involved. But if he's willing to be convinced and he's already accepted some of the benefits of it, and then he supports it and then he's against it again, I'm not too sure if he actually even cares about Bitcoin or he has some agenda against. And this guy is trying to explain to him that, listen, public pensioners, hedge funds, Fidelity, these huge sorry, a message just popped up. Okay, and he's trying to say that like huge funds and institutions are involved. So he trades money on behalf of huge institutions. So he's trying to tell Larry, like, listen, I don't know what you're talking about, that institutions aren't involved. And then O'Leary says, no, institutions aren't involved. And this guy is like, listen, put in 1% into this and let's see where this goes. And then Kevin O'Leary says, no, what? Even sovereign funds aren't involved in all of this. I don't know where Kevin is getting this idea that institutions aren't involved. When this guy is clearly telling him he trades money on behalf of institutions. So I don't know what exactly is going on with Kevin. And some days he's for it. It's like playing both sides. You know, when you play both sides, but you don't want to commit to one side. So at the end of the day, whatever ends up happening, you can say you're correct. So if Bitcoin's a bust, he can wake up and say, you know what, I told you guys so. And then when it pops off, he'll say, yeah, by the way, on the side, I was putting in money while I was going on these interviews and telling you guys not to get in. By the way, I had money on the side. And I'm always just interested in watching how he moves from supporter to critic, and he just goes back and forth. I've always just been interested in watching him, and especially seeing the effects of regulation, because he's so convinced that once regulation set in, Bitcoin is just going to crash and everyone's going to lose money. And so you can say, I told you so. But it seems that a lot of people are actually saying that once regulation comes in and there's a lot more legitimacy of Bitcoin, that will actually drive it up even further, especially if there's no COVID vaccine next year. And that leads us to our next question, which is like, what's the effect of if we have a COVID vaccine next year and things go back to normal? Was this whole bull market of Bitcoin caused by this financial crisis, this pandemic? And if we find a vaccine, will we go back to normal and will Bitcoin go back to trading at 2,000, 3,000? I don't know. Let's find out. But like Robert Kiyosaki said something interesting, which I'm going to talk about in the next commentary, which is about his position on how gold will rise back up again and Bitcoin will crash if there's a vaccine next year.